Okay, now we move to HR 808. Who took that off? Okay.
I did.
Hold for it.
Colleagues, I will go forth. Colleagues, I would like to move to support HR 808. We heard from Barbara Lee's office. We heard from Darren Parker from the African American Caucus. We heard from the Peace Alliance. There are 43 city and other government councils who have endorsed this. Numerous organizations, including Amnesty International, Global AIDS Alliance, the National Organization for Women, chapter of the NAACP. This is really important, particularly given where we are in our history in this country. We must start addressing these issues. Domestic violence, bullying, how many children need to die in schools, how many children need to die, like Trayvon Martin, given stand your ground laws. We have received this call again and again and again for this party to take a position here. And Barbara Lee, who is our DNC representative, a member of our Democratic Congressional Caucus, and who is the former, chair of our Congressional Black Caucus, has asked us to support this legislation. I really think this is important. I would like to come out of here tomorrow at the e-board, having passed this, having made a statement that we are saying no to violence and that we are addressing this issue. And I know there's a question, or there was a question in terms of, I know that there is a question here as to, well, what does it do to I was a political science major in school. One of the things that I did was to look at the formation of the EPA and how it had no teeth when it started and how it was defunded by Nixon and capped. And I think these things start slowly and you make a commitment and you move forward. And I think the California Democratic Party, I think we need to get behind Barbara Lee, and I hope that you'll join me.
Second.
And I'd move to support.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion, yes.
Carol Lennis. I couldn't agree with Susie more. I keep saying it can't get any worse. We can't have any more of these slaughters. We can't have any more of these Trayvon Martins, and yet it gets worse and worse. And not all, what I see is that this is a very sly, insidious, and vicious and evil move by the libertarians that say, dog eat dog, survival of the fittest, we do not, it's all us against you, and we have got to stand for, we've got to turn this around, because we are turning into the most brutal, brutal country that you can imagine. The mentality that our children are growing up with is horrible, and we have got to stand for this, because politically we're losing this battle. When you look at the blogs and when you read all the things that the public is saying, they don't get it, and we've got to help educate them.
Yes.
Okay, Cecile Benedict. I have a question. I was not on the call, and I'd like to know why it was voted to oppose. Can someone answer that?
Yes. Well, you were on the call?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. The vote on the call was 2 in favor, 2 opposed, and I was one of the 2 opposed. I really have been on the fence about this one. Not on the bill itself. The bill itself is a great bill. I've been on the fence of whether it reaches the level of our top 25. But I have to say that the testimony that we heard before, especially from Congresswoman Lee's office, was very persuasive, and that really meant a lot to me. Now, this committee can only give an up or down answer on what to do with the bill. I would really prefer to see a different strategy on this bill. The bill has no chance of passing this current crappy Congress. Sorry about that language, but That's what we have. And so, yeah, none of the federal bills have any chance, and we're stuck with that reality. I'm mentioning this not because the committee can do anything about this, but Congresswoman Lee's office, I'd like to hear this and take this back to the Congresswoman, that maybe if this bill were broken up into all of its separate little pieces, and for now we said, put this piece in the Department of Education, this piece in the Department of State, get them passed little bits here and there, we could actually get those pieces through, and once enough of those pieces are in place, then we could have a bill that would say, hey, let's consolidate all of these pieces like we did with Homeland Security and put them all into one department that could more efficiently manage this kind of thing. But what we have before us is this bill, and as I said, I was persuaded by the testimony, and I will now vote for moving this.
Please, Sandhu. I've on the conversation, I propose that we pass it. And perhaps you're right. And as the chair had mentioned earlier in his introduction, these bills can have good repercussions or whatever that can be decided later within the House. But we need to make a statement that this needs to happen.
Yes.
The time is now. And yes, you'll have great understanding and discussion from that, which is 85% we're talking about this. But I also like to take out what is happening, the 15%. What is happening in the international and how this country is perceived after the wars, after the one, after the other that is continuing. Yes, it may never pass, but we need to continue to make that statement that we need the Office of Peace now.
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I support the bill, and I also think that not working from being on the board of Genesee Domestic Violence Center, I know how much cut has happened to that organization and organizations like it, and I think that this type of bill would address some of those issues as well, so I definitely support the bill.
Other comments?
Let me say at the beginning that to me this is the most important bill on the list. That said, I understand what Richard is saying about components, but for me, you start with connecting the dots. You don't do it later. It may happen. And the other part of that is that this bill is made as probably every federal bill that's on a major issue, every one of them, the argument is highly probable that it will never pass the House for any of them. Any bill. And probably not come out of committee, almost certainly. So the purpose is to announce to our California Democratic delegation that this is of utmost importance.
That's right.
From the California Democratic Party.
Yep.
Other comments? Yes.
Oh, and,
Oh,
sorry, just, thank you. Lots of good discussion, and while echoing the sentiments, I'm going to try to not belabor points that have already been stated. I will make a few new points that may assuage some additional worries about supporting this. Number one, first of all, I want to thank Richard. I know he and I have had extensive discussion about this over the past few days. And while we disagreed, I completely respected the reasons why you had your initial position, and we talked about it, and I appreciate it. In my view, there is a bell curve of types of bills that we take positions on. And the majority of the bell curves are going to be most of the bills we took positions on today, where it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, perhaps, to get to the 2/3 or to get them signed into law. Perhaps with our extra push, they might get there. Some bills, like Assemblymember Bontas, it looks like they have some tailwinds and very little to no opposition, and that's great, and we still have taken positions in support of them. this particular bill, I know what the legislative analyst says. I've read the same articles that you all have. I know in the current Congress, there's a 1% chance that this will get through. Is that a reason for us to take no position on it?
That's right.
I don't think so. We are the California Democratic Party, and I believe there is room for a few of our 25 bills for us to truly make a statement in accordance with the California Democratic Party platform and resolutions, such as the one that will be considered on the floor, very similar to this bill. This bill was written before Trayvon Martin. It was written before some of the massacres and tragedies that we have seen in the last few months. These massacres and what happened in the judicial system over the past week just reminds us that the time is now for us to take a position on this. And I want to thank those of you who have come before this committee extensively to testify. I believe what you're looking for us to do today is take a motion in sunshine. We've discussed this extensively at subcommittees over the past 3 years. This is the time for us to do an up or down vote, and I'm going to call the question.
Before we vote, I'd just like to make one comment, at least just to raise the contrary argument. Though no one else has spoken to it, which is maybe indicative of where this is going, so I think it's appropriate that we hear what the other side of the argument would be. I've read the bill, and while I completely agree with the sentiment, 100%, I don't actually see how the bill is cooked or very workable. I don't know what its effect is going, and I'm talking about, it changes, it's a bill that makes a statement about our values. That's its intention. But what it does is rearrange the debt chairs of government. Changes departments around. That's what it does. That's actually what the bill does. And what the bill does and what's in a name are very different things sometimes. And they renamed the Department of War in America the Department of Defense. That doesn't mean that if we named it the Department of Peace, its mission would change. It would still be the War Department. And so the question I have is, as someone who has done civil rights law in my life and labor law in my life, is I want to know how in a practical matter this is going to affect the Office of Civil Rights Enforcement in the Department of Justice. Is that being moved? Or is it being supplanted? We heard them say that this bill would deal with unemployment. How would it deal with unemployment? Would it supplant the work of the Department of Labor and the unemployment insurance system? I have lots and lots of questions that the bill doesn't answer, because the bill is in fact, in reality, politically, a statement of values. The bill has not been introduced with the hope, in my opinion, that anytime soon we're actually going to be moving this department here and this department there and the next department here and creating a department of peace building that will enforce a series of federal statutes, whether they're criminal or civil.
Can we get Sandra to respond?
Okay, hold on. Just one more thing. We've passed a resolution in support of this. I think that's totally appropriate. And I'm not even going to vote against it. I'm just saying that's the other side of the argument. And so that we understand what was going on in our subcommittee, that's the sort of issue that you're dealing with. And that's been the challenge for this bill, as I understand it, coming through this committee 3 years in a row. With that said, I think the question's been called, and I think we just take the vote. I think we need to keep talking about it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Voting to support it. All opposed? The motion carries.